I've never been too excited about Snezhnaya, probably because it means that the story is reaching its end, but with Nod-Krai things are completely different. I am beyond excited for this new area, especially since we're finally learning about the Free Moons, even though I'm sad we'll have to say goodbye to Natlan and its beautiful landscape and people, since I personally really like this nation and the story we've been told. Anyway, this video is gonna be very long and complicated, so it's better to cut the intro short, but first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update to the game itself. So, grab your moon fragments and let's fly north toward Nod-Krai. Nod-Krai, as we've seen in the web event, is gonna be crowded to say the least. We will encounter 11 factions, some of which we've known for a very long time, while others are completely new. Although this video is all about Nod-Krai, if we want to understand some of these new factions, we should really start with the new artifact set finale of the Deep Galleries, which is mostly about ancient Snezhnaya, but it has ties with Nod-Krai as well. Besides, it's just too interesting not to talk about it. The correct chronological order we should follow is Plume, Goblet, Flower, Circlet and Sand, but that's not all we need, you'll understand in a bit. And lastly, to make it easier, I'll talk about who the characters from the story really are, but also about Skirk's journey in a separate chapter. So, the story begins so long ago that Tavad didn't even exist yet. Somewhere in the cosmos, there's an undying woman from an advanced civilization who's been slumbering for countless millennia inside the celestial disk construct while traveling the universe with her mind, searching for the truths of the universe. Her people basically work as anthropologists, they just study primitive civilizations without being noticed. Interacting with this civilization was indeed forbidden, probably to allow them to evolve naturally without external influences. One day though, she felt something different, a faint glimmer from a little word at the edge of the spiral arm, so the galaxy she was also in, that caused her to wake up from her meditation. More specifically, this glimmer came from a dragon that was born with that planet, and unable to contain her wonder and sorrow, she defied the rules and spoke to the dragon in order to convince it to leave its planet and people, since they were doomed to perish, and to join her in her journey across the universe. The dragon declined the offer because, although from her perspective those people were ignorant, they were the very meaning of the universe for the dragon. So they made an oath. The dragon promised her that it would have brought its people to the stars on its own and asked her to witness this achievement. When she came back to the world, and we're talking about a very long time after, the world was completely different. It was now inside a shell, it was shackled by the shades, and instead of the dragon, who was already dead, the winged one now ruled the radiance of the moons. Shocked, the woman, aka the scribe and later the Voyager, decided to defy once again the rules of her kin and sent her mind inside the body of a young man to walk among the corded animals, that is the humans, and listen to their debates in the City of Gold, Hyperborea. Now, to explain what she witnessed though, we need to go back to the 4 Tiaras artifacts. I've always thought that they talked about Salvendagnir, but it's now clear that the story takes place in Hyperborea. Back then, the people were living under the rules of the heavens and they were guided by the envoys, the angels. As long as they blindly followed their word, they lived happily and they were promised a new era of endless prosperity that would have lasted for 100 years. But soon the people began to ask questions about what would have happened after those 100 years, but the envoys never replied. As a consequence, it became tradition that the retiring priests would be sent in the depths of the earth to seek answers from the petrified Immersul tree, never to come back. As the new era began, prosperity grew and with it came wisdom, but also pride, ambition and doubts, but the envoys never replied, until one day when the people questioned the heaven's authority and schemed to breach into the Garden of the Gods. The envoys were furious, this was completely forbidden and unforgivable sin, and this is when the scribe took over the young boy's body. She, or he, Okay, the scribe witnessed the priests accusing each other of sacrilege to figure out who the real culprit was, because if they were so good at convincing people to even question the gods, then they might have a chance to calm down the envoys. All of a sudden, the scribe spoke and left everybody speechless. If the heavens condemn the pursuit of knowledge, it means that they want people to be ignorant, but above all, if the heavenly laws are actually perfect, why would the envoy fear people's questions? So one by one, the scribe refuted everyone's claims until the priest that wore the white-branched crown, the tiara of frost from before, told the young boy that if sin is just a delusion mortals came up with, as he says, then he should go to the petrified tree to plead his case before the first envoy, the one that casts judgment upon the people, and the boy, the scribe, accepted. When he reached the petrified tree and met the first angel, he immediately asked her about the origins of the world, the most forbidden question one could ever ask, but also a secret no one should have known to begin with. But as soon as the boy told the first angel who he really was, she felt something she had never experienced before. She felt free from the shackles of the enthroned ruler and discovered what it meant to decide things for herself. So she spilled the beans about everything. In the end, the boy was completely disgusted by what this ruler did to the angels. He believed that even the demonic sculptor of bloody nightmares, most likely the ruler of the abyss by the way, would feel sick about this, so he decided to become her sword and shield, pushing her to rebel against the ruler of Tevat for the sake of her kin. This act of defiance, though, didn't go unnoticed. It was witnessed by the Heavenly Moons, who also began to feel some kind of longing in their hearts. The circlet instead actually goes back a little bit because it explains who the angels really are. The angels were the most loyal servants in the heavenly court, and they became the flawless arbiters of justice. When they descended from the heavens, they shone so bright that the people couldn't even look at them. They had silver wings and a crown made of bones of the earth and stars of the sky. Their name was also inscribed on those crowns, and it represented either the love the heavenly god promised to all creatures, or a mandate to rule over the nations of the world. The angels also wove a veil for the great ruler of the firmament, so they probably created the fake sky, and they were sent down into the world to guide and love all creatures equally. This is how things were until the first angel met the boy with star-like pupils, the Voyager, and unknowingly fell in love with him. It was a forbidden love, a freedom the heavens would never permit, and because of that, her crown suddenly broke. As she threw that now useless crown to the ground, she promised to fight to change the laws of the world and to build a city and a tower that soars up to the clouds in order to free the people from the shackles imposed on them and put an end to their suffering. The first angel then shared with the people of Hyperborea the power of creation that the Lord of the Firmament once used, so that they would create a being that could merge with the world, probably to usurp the ownership of Tevat, and from bones of giant beasts, probably the dragons, the artisans forged the Fae spirits. The first angel then told the scribe that she foresaw an age in which the people wouldn't seek the heavens' mercy anymore. The cities will rise above the clouds and stars, and the people will share the sky with the gods they once revered. But her delusions were cut short because the heavens sent down the celestial nails, one of which hit Hyperborea straight on, wiping out the city and the people, engulfing everything with freezing winds, which could be the reason why Snezhnaya is frozen in the first place, considering the winter is said to come from Hyperborea. The first angel was then stripped of her name and form, and a curse was laid upon her kin. If they ever fell in love with a single person instead of loving every creature of the world, they would lose their divine beauty and mind, and only a Seelie will be left behind, doomed to endlessly wander the earth looking for lost memories to consume. Now let's talk about the details of this story. I think that the scribe, the Voyager, is in reality O, the witch we've been calling Octavia. We've learned from the Little Witch and the Undying Flame that she has seen many worlds and that she knows about the sky beyond the sky, so she might also be the one telling Alice stuff from other planets, like the concept of idols. If it's Octavia, then the fact that the scribe was slumbering in a celestial disk construct is because her home world was destroyed. Considering also that the Voyager is just another way to say traveler, this seems to mean that Octavia should be a descender, but I'll explain what I really think in a moment. Now, the story began with Nibelung, the dragon, on the old world before the Primordial One arrived, and when the Voyager came back, she found Tevat. This means that she missed both the war between the dragons and the Primordial One, but also the fight between the Primordial One and the second who came. That being said, the story talks about two more entities, the Winged One and the God or Lord of the Firmament. I believe that the Winged One is the second who came, since it ruled over the moons, while the Lord of the Firmament is the Heavenly Principles who, despite what people still think, are not the Primordial One. In the Flower of Life, the Lord of the Firmament is specifically defined as the enthroned ruler, and enthroned means that someone put this ruler there, they were given the throne. So I still think that the Heavenly Principles were, let's say, produced by the second who came, more or less like the Primordial One created the Shades. With the Heavenly Principles as the first descenders, and this alone would prove that they're not the Primordial One, but let's ignore that, the Voyager simply has to be related to the second descender, because they arrived on Tevat not long before the Celestial Nails were sent down. Apart from the fact that this confirms my theory that whenever a descender arrives, a catastrophe is sure to happen soon after, I still think that the second descender is one of the two heirs from the Battle Pass. They came from a kingdom established among the heavens, so from beyond Tevat, and they also arrived before the nails came down because Vindagnir in the background isn't frozen yet. As a consequence, Octavia might be the first heir who now believes to be the Queen of the Kingdom of Darkness. So is the Voyager the second descender? No, she's not. Just like Lumine and Ether, the, let's say, non-descender causes the catastrophe, while the other one is the actual descender. So since the Voyager caused the problem, the descender has to be the second heir, but we still don't know who he is. I've personally always believed that he was Immunlauker, but then again it's just my thought, not a true theory. Moving on, something else that actually left me speechless is that the angels, despite what seemed to be the obvious in the past, may have been created by the Heavenly Principles and not the Primordial One. And on hindsight, it now makes sense why Yohualtekutin said,
"The Almighty Heavenly Principles."
Talking about the angels, does what we read mean that every single Seelie we've encountered so far was once an angel that defied the Heavenly Principles and fell in love with someone? Though the curse is actually weird. While Yohualtekutin makes sense, her mind is still intact because she still loves every creature of Tevat equally, what does it say about Nabu Malikata? She never fell in love, she never knew love in the first place, and she definitely didn't love Deshret. And yet she was barely able to hang on to her form and mind because of the curse. This honestly makes little sense to me. Also about the angels, Kulik got instinct, but is Columbina gonna turn out to be the first angel by any chance? Lastly, remember the first angel's oath? She basically wanted to build a city and a tower in the sky, and since this happened before the nails descended, could it be that she created the floating island of Celestia? There is a tower up there, you know. When it comes to Skirk's journey, things are slightly more complicated. She was instructed to go to Hyperborea by her magical swordmaster, Surtalogi, and apart from the fact that the place is to the northernmost reaches of Tevat, past the Frozen Sea, we just learned that there's another spiral abyss there. This means that we might either finally go down into the abyss, or we're finally getting another endgame mode, or maybe both, who knows. This spiral abyss though justifies how Chile ended up in the abyss. He was running through the forest, he fell into Hyperborea and then straight down the spiral abyss, but what about Skirk? Did she arrive before or after he fell? This is quite hard to figure out, but we also know that she was looking for traces left behind by the Voyager, which makes me think that she went to Hyperborea, descended into the domain where the first angel resided, and then went down into the abyss, but not long after, Child fell inside by accident and Skirk rescued him. The problem is that this is too much of a coincidence. This was fate doing its thing. Remember the historical Snezhnayan figure Ajax? He also went to Hyperborea and fell in love with a girl, Snegurochka, but their love ended when they lost each other because of the wicked trick of the changelings. If the historical Ajax was the name of the boy the Voyager used, then Child's name also being Ajax in his honor could mean something more. In Simulanka, we learned that if fate is at play, giving someone a specific name from the past means that they'll live a very similar life story. This of course might mean that Child could be the Voyager's descendant, which would justify why Surtalogi instructed Skirk to teach him how to fight, and eventually even gave him his legacy, the Foul Legacy. We don't have too much to work with right now, but you'd expect the descendant of such an important person to be able to complete at least one mission, right? Now, the people of Hyperborea that survived the Celestial Nail abandoned their ancient civilization and beliefs, except for their faith in the Moon Goddess, and relocated to another place, specifically at the borders of Snezhnaya, in the forests and on the mountains of Hisi Island. These people are now known as the Frost Moon Scions, one of the 11 factions of Nod-Krai. By the way, notice how many Unified Nation ruins are on this island. The whole place seems to have been part of it, just like in Konomiya. The story also told us about the birth of the Fae spirits, that in Nod-Krai are called the Snowland Fae, creatures that once followed the Beli Tsar, the White Tsar, the first Cryo-Archon, and ruled over the entirety of Snezhnaya. Then, probably after the Tsar died, they lost their former glory, but they found a new way to keep influencing Snezhnaya, which makes me think, is Pulcinella a Fae? I mean, he's the first ever short man and he has elf ears, but above all, he's the mayor of Snezhnaya, an exceptional one it seems. So if he's not influential, then I don't know who is. Furthermore, in the artifact set we're about to talk about, the Fae are called dignitaries, which is exactly what Arlecchino keeps calling Pulcinella. Lastly, in my last Harbinger's video, I deduced that Pulcinella might either be a higher being and/or is trying to ascend to an even higher form. And if he's a Fae, a being created with a forbidden method originally used by the Heavenly Principles, then it would be more than fitting. I can't wait to meet Pulcinella, can you tell? Moving on, the other artifact set, Long Night's Oath, which goes from the foundation of Nod-Krai to a few centuries after the Cataclysm, introduces 4 more factions. The story begins not long before the Cataclysm, when the Wild Hunt, what the people of Snezhnaya call their version of the Abyss, and I swear if someone says to toss a mora to the Traveler or lose it, wiped out the area and the people at the borders of the nation, which was what the Kniesies, the princess, actually wanted the Abyss to do. In that time, there was a mad monk, we don't know who this is, who wanted to obtain the power left behind by the moons, and to do that, he proposed a treacherous plan to the Winter Tsar, the Tsar of all Fae, the first Cryo-Archon, which forced the moon children who lived in the forest, the Frost Moon Scions, to scatter and be led astray. In the end, this monk never achieved his goal to break free from the fake sky. Instead, he was consumed by the bedeviled sky, probably the red sky we saw hidden behind the fake sky. Somewhere in the northernmost part of Snezhnaya, there were also 2 children of humble origins who they dreamed about an imaginary place where the people were free to live as they pleased. When these 2 children grew up, they took very different paths. One became a notorious criminal and was eventually executed for his crimes, while the other was first hired as a spy by the Beli Tsar and then became a part of the upper class in Snezhnaya, passing his day mingling with the Fae dignitaries of the court. Soon after though, the cataclysm happened, and the Tsar was too busy defending Snezhnaya, so the Borderlands were left to fend for themselves against the Wild Hunt, that destroyed all traces of ancient civilization. The only person who decided to help them was a warrior clad in dark silver armor, the young man from before. As soon as he arrived, the priestess of the Moon Children lent him her power, a beam of light that banished and buried the abyss and everything it corrupted. From that moment on, this man became known as the first Torchbearer, and with the other survivors who became the Lightkeepers or Ratniki, warriors, he built a lighthouse on top of the mountains and even confronted the Tsaritsa. The oath they all took was simple. The Borderlands past the snowy plains would become independent from the court of Snezhnaya, but they would have to repel any kind of invasion, becoming Snezhnaya's shield. This is how the paradise, Nod-Krai, came to be. Centuries later, the people believed that as long as the lighthouse was standing, nothing would have harmed them, but that was not the case. Suddenly, the Lightkeepers heard the whispers of the leader of the Wild Hunt over the horizon and got ready to fight, waiting for the Starshina, the leader of the army, which in this case was the current Torchbearer, to give them a signal, but he never did because he noticed a contingent of the Fatui approaching from Pyramida's Gate, the northern gate. This contingent, the Warriors of the Pale Star, which is apparently what the logo actually represents, was made of Fatui who didn't follow a specific harbinger, but in this case they were led by Dottore. They acted as reinforcements, but the Starshina knew all too well that he had ulterior motives. Still, as Dottore reminded him, the Ratniki had no choice but to fight, even though it was a battle they wouldn't have come back alive from, because that was part of the oath their ancestors made with the Tsaritsa, and then he promised them that had they been defeated, he would have taken care of the aftermath. Before leaving the Lempo Isle to fight, they held a banquet in the Mead Hall, where one specific young man stood out the most because of his archaic armor, because it meant that he was a direct descendant of the original Lightkeepers that fought alongside the first Torchbearer, the few remaining Ratniki to uphold the ancient oath of their ancestors, believing that the Lord of all Fae and Protector of Snezhnaya was still watching over them. After the banquet, the Ratniki and the Fatui, who were led by a righteous warrant officer, were sent to the battlefield, fully aware that they wouldn't have come back alive, which was exactly what Dottore needed to take over Nod-Krai without opposition. Among the Wild Hunt monsters, one branded a sword and even commanded a flock of black-feathered crows, which sounds weekly boss material, and the Ratniki were all obviously defeated. The descendant of the original Lightkeepers instead managed to push deep into the forest where the foul force that summoned the Wild Hunt was, but he was also defeated. When he realized his end was approaching, he prayed to a god no one calls upon anymore, the Beli Tsar, and to the Knyazes he once held dominion over, so they are the Fae. The descendant, probably corrupted by the abyss, kept walking on alone, unconsciously still trying to uphold his oath and complete the mission, but his prayers caused a long-dormant phantom to awaken in response, who suddenly appeared as a ghostly blue wildfire in the middle of the battlefield, ready to fight, although we don't really know who this entity actually is. In the end, only a criminal and the children he managed to save came back from the battlefield, and this was probably Reed Miller, the founder of the Treasure Hoarders and probably also a descendant of the first Torchbearer's friend, while Dottore used the Lightkeeper's defeat as an act of betrayal against the Tsaritsa, because they couldn't fulfill their ancient oath, but this crime was conveniently absolved with a new oath he forced onto the people, one that gave him ownership and authority over Nod-Krai, turning it into his own stronghold. These two artifact sets introduce 7 out of 11 factions we'll encounter in Nod-Krai: the Frostmoon Scions, the Lightkeepers, the Fatui, the Snowland Fae, the Treasure Hoarders, the Wild Hunt, and even the Hexen Circle if the Voyager was actually Octavia. I mean, the boy she possessed might have died of old age and she simply got a new body, one that could last way longer, maybe one of those artificially created Fae spirits, for example. Anyway, we've known for a while that Alice was trying to fix the borders of Teyvat, so with Nod-Krai being at the edge of the world, it just means that we will finally get to meet her. It was about time. Now let's talk about the other 4 factions. We've known since the start of the game that the Knights of Favonius had left for an expedition to the north, led by Grandmaster Varka and the Seneschal Seamus Pegg, Jean and Barbara's father. When Mika came back from the expedition, he read Varka's letter, in which he reminded the people that they were on a crucial mission about a dangerous secret from days past, that led them to the northernmost reaches of Teyvat, which sounds like Hyperborea, where they even met Capitano. Then, in Jean's birthday letter, we learned that some of the knights had been sent back to Port Dorman for defense together with Frederica Gunhilder, Jean and Barbara's mother, while the rest of them went to Nod-Krai to further their investigation. If there's one character I can't wait to meet, it's Varka, also because I hope he'll look like Siegfried from ShadowXImpact and we're finally about to meet him. Another faction is the Adventurers Guild. We will probably find yet another Catherine in Nod-Krai, but above all, there's an important figure from the guild who is preparing to welcome us as a sign of respect. Considering that the Adventurers Guild originates in Snezhnaya and that every Catherine is an android, I think and I hope this is none other than Sandrone. Many of you know my theory that the real Sandrone is the Fontanian dress room machine, not the girl, and that it is, in reality, Alain Guillotin who, just like Sandrone, locked himself into his workshop when he retired and then suddenly vanished, leaving behind only traces of something big being built. We know Alain used to work with room machines, so my theory is that he moved his consciousness into one of them and then recreated an android version of Marianne, believing that she died back inside Elena's, and this is the girl it carries in its hand like a little treasure, a petit chou. So my usual description of Sandrone is a puppet puppeteer puppeteering a puppet. Yes, I need to meet Sandrone, right now. Next is the Voynich Guild, the commerce guild that the people of Nasha Town founded to give some law and order to Nod-Krai, but the guild alone can't do much against the outlaws that jump from one island to the other, and that's where the boss lady from the Curatorium of Secrets has to act, striking fear into criminals' hearts. We've heard of the Voynich Guild back in 5.1 with Liben, who was robbed of his merchandise as soon as he got to Nod-Krai. He then asked for help to the guild and they got all his stuff back, even buying all of it. Problem is that as soon as Liben left, he was coincidentally robbed again, this time of the money he made, which makes me think that the Voynich Guild isn't exactly as righteous as they sound. At the end of the day, Nod-Krai, as we know, plays by its own rules. The last faction doesn't make sense. We have people trying to save the world, others are on a crucial mission, the Fatui are doing something big, and then there's the Clink Clank Crumb Cake craft shop, like really? Anyway, this used to be a small workshop led by a prodigy, a genius who wanted to research the world's best crumb cake machine, but she invented so many machines that the workshop became a huge deal in Nod-Krai. People even beg her for a favor, but they need to mind their manners, otherwise their inventions might cut out a nasty crumb cake. I honestly don't even know what to think of this, it feels so out of place. What else do we know about Nod-Krai? This is gonna be a completely different experience compared to the nations we've visited so far, and the people there even use some kind of unique power that Mawika defined as predating the 7 elements. Apart from that, we can deduce quite a few more things. Helka's notes talk about relics similar to the secret source automatons from Natlan, which led her to believe that Nod-Krai was an archipelago that somehow drifted away from Natlan. This is most likely not what happened, but the fact that she came out with that means that Nod-Krai should be somewhere north of Natlan, so northwest of Fontaine, which also means that we should get the Mount Esus area soon in order to have a way to get to Nod-Krai without weird holes in the map. As a consequence, Snezhnaya should also be north of Fontaine, so top left of the map, probably. When we talked to Helka instead, she said that the Frost Moon Scions are weird, that they worship a moon deity, that Nod-Krai is full of statues they made, and that they perform magic. She also told us about a place called Speranza, which means hope by the way, in Nasha town, and by the sound of it, it might be a bar or a restaurant, so probably where Katya works as a chef. She used to be a renowned adventurer that traveled around the whole world, but because of her injuries she had to retire early and settle down in Nasha town. Helka also told us about an ancient civilization that used to exist in Nod-Krai, of which only lots of mechanical scraps remain. These were the pioneers that the Bel Tsar sent to the Borderlands for a large-scale development project, probably to relocate to a better place considering Snezhnaya is completely frozen. Lastly, Helka told us that Nod-Krai suddenly got extremely dangerous recently, not long after she left to compile her Pokédex of Devat monsters. Lots of Fatui arrived in Nod-Krai, bringing construction materials in, and even either one or multiple Harbingers have been spotted. We know why this is happening, it's Project Stuja. When the Pale Star Edict was issued, the Harbingers were all called back to Snezhnaya and sent to Nod-Krai, as Arlecchino and Child said in Fontaine. This means that we will meet Arlecchino and Child again, but also Pulcinella and Pantalone, while Dottore should already be there since it's its stronghold. The project definitely has something to do with the ancient moons, especially considering how Dottore's Fatui immediately got to Natlan when the fragments in the sky appeared, while others have been stealing the fragments that crashed on the ground, as the empty craters clearly show. And since the biggest piece shines grey with elemental sight, it should mean that it will be removed from down there as well. Now, when it comes to the moons, things get kinda tricky. The Frost Moon should be the one we see in the sky. It ceased to turn, so ignoring how the moon cycle works in reality, this might be the reason why it's always a full moon. The iridescent moon instead should be the fragments in the sky of Natlan since it's shattered, but also the crimson moon in Khaenri'ah, since its crimson shadow sank into the abyssal sea. Lastly, the eternal moon that simply fell should be the one in the abyss, the one we've always known to be still alive. Now, the web event hints at a new moon that will eventually rise, and this obviously reminds me of Simulanka. You know, the lighthouse, the lightkeeper trying to fix it, we went to the Whispering Isle and placed the light in the sky, creating a moon. Are we getting a second moon in the sky after Nod-Krai? I would honestly like to see that. To conclude the video, I have the biggest question of all time. When will Nod-Krai be released? People have completely opposite ideas about this, so let me tell you my theory. In the 5.3 livestream, the devs talked about their future plans after the end of Natlan's Archon Quest, and they showed us the characters we would meet in the following 6 months, so up until version 5.7. Escoffier and Aoife will be released in 5.6 with also Mare Jivari, so Skirk and Dahlia are coming in 5.7, probably with the last area of Fontaine, so that Skirk could speak with Neuvillette as she said she would. In one of those 2 updates, we also need another Harbinger, so either Colombina or the 10th unknown Harbinger, to steal Mawika's noses, although I still think that the Traveler will keep it, so that we would be justified not to run straight to Snezhnaya to stop the Tsaritsa. 5.8 instead is an enigma, especially since Simulanka felt like the last summer event, considering the nostalgic mementos from the previous events hidden under the Whispering Isle. Since every single summer event has hinted at the following Archon Quest, it would be hard to hint at a frozen area with a summer resort like the Golden Apple Archipelago or the Valyria Mirage, while Simulanka already hinted at Nod-Krai as we just saw, so my idea is that Nod-Krai will simply be released in 5.8. You might think that the story there is just too much for a single update, and I completely agree. The solution? Just make something different and unique. They can use 5.8 to get us acquainted with the area, the factions and the quest, while also hinting at the Archon quest, and then complete it in version 6.0 while also finally starting the Archon quest. I mean, the moon powers will probably be needed for the Tsaritsa's plan, otherwise she wouldn't have sent so many harbingers for a simple project. Besides, if Nod-Krai was part of version 6, what would be the point in talking about it in the 5.3 livestream at all? Anyway, things are about to take a very serious turn in Genshin Impact, so let's all get ready, because we're definitely gonna face some pretty hard trials moving on, as we get closer and closer to Pierro's final act. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact theory videos, consider subscribing. Of course, my next video is gonna be about the ending of the Ochkanatlan World Quest, but I will need a lot of time for that since it was an extremely complicated last quest. Anyway, I've talked too much already, so thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.